Hello and welcome to episode 3 of the Apex podcast. Today I'm joined by Brian hÁonghusa. Thank you for coming. Give us a little bit about you.
Hey Dermot, thanks for having me. It's going to be a fun chat. So yeah, my name is Brian hÁonghusa. I am a nutrition and lifestyle coach and nutritionist, and I work for the Fit Clinic, which is an online nutrition coaching and consultancy service. And yeah, so I've studied as a nutritionist and then gone on to do further courses and certificates in coaching, and this is where I've ended up coaching people one-to-one to help them improve their nutrition and lifestyle, depending whatever their goals are.
So not that the qualifications matter too much, but just out of interest, you've did quite a bit, haven't you? So what has been the kind of most beneficial? Because I've asked you this a couple of times before.
Yeah, so I mean, I did my Bachelor's of Science in Human Nutrition in University College Dublin, which is probably the best thing I have for credibility. That's it's important to have gone through a university assessment process with a curriculum, and it means I can be registered as a nutritionist with several different organizations. So it's an issue where anybody can be a nutritionist.
Yes.
These days. So if you're ever looking for some sort of standard set, there's different the Association for Nutrition, for example. I can register with them because of the course I've done. But then I think in terms of coaching qualifications, the precision nutrition courses were really, really beneficial for me, especially the precision nutrition level 2, which is a quite intensive year-long online course, and I think that was that was really a game changer in terms of
people.
Yeah, because the degree would give me all the nutrition science, pretty more than I would need to work with people. Obviously, you need to know the stuff in depth. You need to stay on top of it because nutrition research is always changing. It's a fun field in that way. But to actually apply to people and actually to help them change their behaviors and habits and get to the point where they're getting healthier through the nutrition and lifestyle, the PN level 2 was excellent for that, and I really couldn't recommend it enough.
Okay, so that's what I was going to kind of touch on today, was the whole lifestyle side of things and practicing gratitude and maybe stress management and like dealing with self-sabotage. And then we'll chat a little bit on the kind of the game changers, as it seems to be awfully popular at the moment, and people going vegan and whether it's a good or bad plan.
Even though we're into February now and Veganuary is technically over, I don't know how many people have stuck with it at this point, but yeah, we can talk about that for sure. It's an important one to talk about.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, just when it comes to kind of your daily routine and your practicing of gratitude, and you just give me a rundown of what you do.
Yeah. Okay. So practicing gratitude, I think, is one of the best things people can do for one of the best, and then also the most simple and easy to implement thing people can do for their overall well-being, happiness. And this is all been studied and researched that a regular gratitude practice can increase your happiness by up to 20%, and it's actually lasting compared to, say, winning the lottery, which gives you like a boost in happiness for the short term until you normalize with the fact that you now have all this extra cash. Obviously, up to a certain point, like, you need a certain amount of financial stability to have a sense of well-being. But it's interesting that if you get used to that lifestyle where you've won the lottery, it kind of goes back to baseline. Whereas with practicing gratitude, it's lasting and it's so simple to do. And I think it's such an important practice to have because it just frames your mindset and your attitude through the day. Say if you do it in the morning, but then if you're doing it regularly, you start to see the little bits of good in everyday life, which is what you need. Like, you don't want to have to rely on like big massive things that are like this was deadly. That might not happen that regularly. You want to find what's class within the mundane through the day, if you like. So in terms of practicing gratitude, there's loads of ways to to maybe go about it. And what I usually recommend to people is maybe buy a gratitude journal. Something like the 5-minute journal is really good. Just to get started off, because if you've never done it before, something like a 5-minute journal, it has a nice template. It's laid out for you. It's very easy to get started with, very easy to interact with. There's lots of prompts. You just have to write. And once you do one of those, you probably have a good idea of what to do, and you can just write it wherever you want. But you could do that from the start either.
Yeah, I suppose I've been practicing it quite a lot lately, but I'm not as consistent with it as I should be. And it's one of them things where it's so simple to do. It's like literally 40 seconds at the start of your day, at the end of your day, and it's something that, as you said, will genuinely help. So I'm going to make a conscious effort to get on top of that and get doing that a little bit more. And I suppose, that kind of win the lottery things, it's like, I was just listening to a podcast earlier. Ben Pakulski had a guest on, and they were talking about whether he had made, I think he said he had made 6 million, and he was like, okay, well, I'll be happy when it's 10. And it's like, at what stage is this? Do you realize that it's not about the money kind of thing?
Right. It's conditional. That's an issue if you start to rely on this conditional happiness, or conditional anything, like, circumstances conditional. If you want to, get in shape, if you're waiting for that perfect time, or you're waiting to hit a certain milestone before you allow yourself to be happy, it's going to be an issue, because like that guy said, you're always going to be moving on to the next thing. Then, like, if he makes the 10 million, then it's like, all right, well, now I want to make 15.
Yeah, of course.
And that's where, like, gratitude practice really comes into its own, because you're thinking about your day, you're thinking about the relationships you have, the people in your life, the experiences, the opportunities, and just reflecting on, how good those are for you. Because we're all very, very lucky. We're incredibly lucky. Anybody who's able to listen to this podcast is in, the top few percent in the world, in terms of opportunity. And just to be able to acknowledge that, and just see the good in the little things. And some people, gratitude practice can get a bit sticky, where if you can get a bit repetitive, where you can just write, like, I'm grateful for my friends, my family, my health. If you write that day after day after day,
okay, yeah, because that's what I would have been doing, to be honest.
Right, so you lose that connection with those things. So what a tip for people is, you want to take each of those subjects maybe, but go a little bit deeper into them, get a bit more specific. So, you're grateful for, say, your family. Well, who in your family? What about them are you grateful for? What experiences, what fond memories you have with them? Same thing for your health. So yeah, we're in good health, but what does that afford us do? What can we do with that? We can go train, we can wake up feeling good in the morning. And I think, reflecting on any experiences, opportunities that you've had, is a really, really good way to get a bit more specific with it. And that way you kind of don't run out of material, and you don't lose that connection to what you're writing about.
Daddy. Okay. So just a little bit on kind of a stress management and maybe a sleep management as well. Mm-hmm. What are the kind of things that you try to implement with clients that are really high stressed and their sleep quality and quantity is crap? Right,
yeah. So those two are intimately linked, where if you're very stressed out, your sleep might be shit, yeah. And if your sleep goes to hell, you're going to feel more stressed. So your ability to cope with stress reduces when you're not sleeping properly. And it can be a little bit easier said than done, because if you're very stressed out, if you're worrying about things, it can be hard to get a good night's sleep. So first of all, you need to have some sort of stress management practice. Like, what I would usually say to people is that, the more stresses that are in your life, and there's a big spaghetti soup of stress, like we talked about, there's so many things feeding into that. You've got psychological stress, job, relationships, training stress is a physical stress, whatever you're doing with your nutrition,
environment, and everything,
is they're all potential stressors. So the more stressors you have, I like to use the analogy of a bucket. So all your stresses get poured into this bucket, and if you let it get to the point where it starts to overflow, and stress is pouring out the sides, you start to lose the run of it. that's when you start to get negative consequences, like, you know, your sleep is terrible, you might get injured, you might get sick more often, your mental health might suffer. So what I say is, you know, the more it's pouring into that bucket, the more you need to try and drain out some of that. So you start punching holes in that bucket with different practices. Maybe it's meditation, maybe it's journaling, maybe you make a conscious effort to get out in nature more often, practicing gratitude again, that definitely fits in there. Doing more restorative physical activity like yoga, anything that involves breathing is quite good. And my top 3 or 4 things usually with clients, like, this is based on what's easy to implement and what's also very effective. So where those overlap, I think you've got things like journaling, and that includes gratitude journaling, but not just that. So journaling is very, very therapeutic. So there's no right or wrong way to do it, but, you know, if you're worried about stuff, writing it down and writing about how you feel and what you're thinking, what that can help you do is you can then see it on paper and it gets it out of your head, and you can actually look at it and assess it. So you can also almost have like a therapy session with yourself, because you're dealing with what you've written down on the paper, and then you're also able to react to that rather than having it all swimming around in your head.
Definitely.
So that's really, really useful, and especially, you know, for people who struggle to switch off at night, maybe if they're worrying about things, just writing about that stuff for 5-10 minutes before they try to go to sleep can really help calm them down, get a better night's sleep. You wake up more rested, less stressed. It's very, very helpful. So that's one thing. The getting out in nature and walking. You know, the Japanese have this concept called forest bathing, where, you know, they've studied this, where going out for walks in like a city environment versus going out for walks in a natural environment like a forest, there's a difference in reduction of stress levels when you're in a natural place. So we're made to be out in that. We like that. So if people can do that a little bit more, and then obviously walking is really good for us too. It's, you know, low impact activity, but it gets you out moving. That's excellent. And then you can also think about reframing how you think about stress, which is where the stoicism comes into it.
Yeah.
So having a different philosophy about that. So, you know, for people who don't know, the Stoic philosophy, it's an ancient philosophy, but it's very, very applicable to our situations modern day, even though it's, like, you know, a couple of thousand years old. But one of the main tenets of that is that you control your perceptions always. So, you know, if me and you go skydiving, maybe I'm super excited to go skydiving. It's really, really fun. Maybe you're terrified and you really don't want to jump out of that plane. It's the same event, but we react to it very differently.
Yeah.
So you can see how that's a different in perceptions. So I could say that all events and situations are neutral until you add a meaning to them, and you decide on that meaning all the time. So this is something I've been talking about with a lot of clients. Last week, for whatever reason, a lot of them were having kind of work stress. So I was saying to them, you know, see, can you reframe that? Because it's, instead of saying you have to do something, maybe try and reframe to you get to do it. Yeah. Go a little deeper with that. You get to do it. It must satisfy some need that you have, and there's a reason for you to do it. And that is very, very, it sounds overly simplistic, but it works. So you can just think about any things that you say you maybe complain about doing, you don't want to do. Assess why you're doing them. What needs do they satisfy? In what way is it good that you get to do this, rather than, oh, this is just something I have to do. So that's kind of changing your mindset around stresses, because, you know, if you don't perceive something as being stressful, you know, it makes it a lot less stressful in real terms, which is interesting.
Definitely. Yeah, and I find a lot of times, especially with, like, a lot of people that I'm working with, we need to be able to use the things before we train. So what I mean by that is, like, we can't combat good stress with bad stress. So for us to be in control of everything outside of the gym will leave us in a better position for when we train. Our ability to progress and our ability to recover will work a lot better if we're not in a constantly stressed or underslept state. Okay, so I have just self-sabotage written down here. I have to pull a question about self-sabotage.
Yeah, self-sabotage is an interesting one. It's sort of complex, and there's many potential reasons why people might self-sabotage. But I think, to a large extent, trying to attach your identity to what you're trying to do. So you'll have certain ideas about what kind of person you are, what kind of person you want to be, and you kind of operate the best when you can match your behaviors to the thing, like to what your values are. So the things that are important to you in life, in a broad sense. If you behave in a way, your actions reflect your values, you tend to feel pretty good. Things would go well for you. You feel kind of in sync with yourself. That sounds a bit airy-fairy, but it's not. Stick with me on it. Whereas if you have certain values and you act differently to them, it can feel kind of conflicted. You feel kind of ambivalent about what you're doing. And I see this happens a lot, like where people maybe don't understand what their actual values are. So it's a very important exercise, I think, to spend some time thinking about what kind of person do you want to be, what way does that person act, and then try and match your behaviors to that. And an example I'd have is like maybe a lot of mothers that I coach, they will have problems where it's like, I didn't make training sessions this week, or I was so busy running around looking after the kids that I wasn't feeding myself properly. And it's like, okay, well, where on your list of priorities or within your values, like where is family and where is you're looking after your kids on that? And it's like, it's right at the top.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, okay, well then you're doing exactly what you should be doing in that context. And look, we'll talk about ways where you can try and find a bit more time for yourself, and we'll manage this, try and manage your environment and get some systems running where it'll run a lot smoother. But it's like once you point that out to them, they're like, oh yeah, actually that does make sense why I'm doing that. Of course I'm going to bring my little girl to her basketball match instead of going training myself. And then they're like, actually, yeah, this I actually feel much better now because it actually makes sense. So that's important. And I think with self-sabotage, we're still on that subject, don't worry, I didn't forget on that little tangent. Where it can come into that then is if a person's not ready to change their identity to be the person they want to be. Say I see this a lot with people who've maybe are losing a lot of weight or have lost a lot of weight, and they'll come to maybe a point where it's like, oh, this is like the lightest I've been in,
forever, since I was 12.
Yeah, something like that. And it's like, I'm like, okay, well, are you prepared to accept that you are that person now based on your behavior that can, blow beyond that, say, weight category? Because if they're not, then part of their identity that is holding on to the fact that like, oh, I'm this overweight person, that's who I am, then your behavior is going to suddenly match that, and that's where you might end up self-sabotaging. Do you know what I mean? So I've seen that a few times, and you have to coach people through that and be like, look, you're a very different person now than you are because you're the sum of all your behaviors. So every time you do something like meal prep, eat a healthy meal, get a full night's sleep, you're casting votes for that person that you want to be. So you have to make sure that you now identify with that person. And like a prompt is like, if people are struggling, it's like, okay, well, what would the person that I want to be do in this situation? And then you go and do that. Or you can have that's where like role models come in as well, or people you might look up to. It's like, what would such and such do in this situation? Anyone that you admire or you want to model yourself after, what would they do? And then that can help with your action. But I find that self-sabotage can happen a lot where people just aren't ready to relinquish that part of themselves, even though it's gone, like because of the way they're acting. If you're gonna eat crap for weeks and months on end and gain a bunch of weight, that's a very different person to who you are now, who is eating healthily, looking after themselves and losing weight. So you have to be able to disconnect from that old person and then accept that you are this new person. And that's where I see self-sabotage coming into it a lot. Because people almost don't believe that they are that person now. so they revert back, or they get scared. And another big component of self-sabotage is that they're afraid because they're stepping outside their comfort zone and they're taking full responsibility for themselves. So there's no excuses anymore. And if they fail, it's all on them. So an example of this might be like someone going for a really important job interview, maybe something they really want, but maybe they go out drinking the night before, and then they go in hungover, and it's like, oh, I didn't get the job because I did a shit interview because I was hungover. Why the hell did I do that? Well, that kind of shirks responsibility, because you've essentially sabotaged yourself there, so you don't have to just say, it's me and you in the interview room, just me at my best, this is who I am, I may get the job, I may not, but it's scary for people sometimes for that to be all on them. You know what I mean?
They want to have something to fall back on, nearly.
Yeah, it's like having an excuse, and obviously it makes absolutely no sense, because you do want that job, we think, but it's scary to have to like put yourself all out there. It's all on you. There's no excuses. So that's another way people can self-sabotage, I think.
Okay, right. That was steady. Really, really good. I really enjoyed that.
Thank you.
Now let's touch on the game changes. And if you watch this,
yeah. Unfortunately, I have. I've been scarred by it.
Yeah, no, as have I. But before we start, it's actually like it's a movie. It's meant to be exciting. It's meant to be put together in a way for you to get excited after this.
Yep.
And it's one of them things where, like, when they showed the athletes. Now, for an athlete, let's take the strongman, and he's in a position where his calories could be 5,000 or beyond. So for him to get his protein in, it's not a problem. That's okay. We can do that, because of the high amount of calories and the room for putting them in.
Yeah.
But for a lot of people, that's just like not realistic. Now, you just give me your thoughts on going vegan for, like, I understand going vegan for animals.
Yeah.
I get that completely. I was like, good for you, and good for you in that sense. But if you're going vegan to feel better, if you want to shave 20 minutes off your marathon, just let's go performance and health, and you take them in whichever order you want.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I completely agree. Ethical reasons for going vegan, absolutely no issue with that. No issue with veganism, full stop. I do have issue with documentaries that lie to people, like Game Changers does, and I think there's a certain amount of personal responsibility where you shouldn't be taking your nutrition information from documentaries.
Netflix, yeah,
from Netflix. Like it's not a good source. It's going to be very biased, and that's what you see in something like Game Changers. And like you said, it's well put together. It's a movie. It's supposed to be entertaining, and it's supposed to trigger emotions in people,
which it does.
It does, yeah, and it does a good job of that. And it scared a lot of people into going vegan, or maybe just say, oh, maybe I should try that. So from a health and performance standpoint, which those two things are not always aligned, we know that, but it's it's gonna, a lot of it will depend on where you're coming from in terms of your dietary habits. So if you're eating a diet full of
shit,
full of processed foods, not much plant matter, not much protein, not drinking much water, and if you switch to a healthy vegan diet, because you can still eat a shit vegan diet, you can still just eat French fries,
Oreos,
and chips, and Doritos and shit.
Yeah, maybe not Oreos.
Pasta.
Pasta's okay.
Yeah, sorry. I'm thinking of
what the hell?
I'm thinking of examples of people who've eaten just plain pasta like 3 meals a day. That's what I'm thinking of. Sorry, yeah, pasta is fine. That's no, there's no good or bad foods. Definitely is a disclaimer there. But it's if you're coming from a place where your diet was very poor and you start eating much better, and that happens to look like a vegan diet, you will feel a lot better. You will likely perform a lot better.
You cut out foods that are keeping you chronically inflamed, and you're now more food conscious.
Yeah, you're getting more nutrients in. But is going vegan the only and best way to do that?
No.
Yeah, and that's what the documentary would suggest. That like, you want to perform your best, you want to be healthy, you need to stop eating animal products, which is nonsense. Okay, so from my perspective as a nutritionist, I think the quote unquote best diet, like there's a lot that goes into what a best diet is for an individual, and it's very different depending on the person. But the best diet is one that you eat a lot of whole unprocessed plant foods, and you eat enough animal protein, animal products, because they're also very dense in nutrients. So if you combine those two together, like lots of plants and lots of
plant-based diet, who eats meat?
Yeah, because there's no definition of what plant-based is. Like, I'll have people who come to work with me and they say, I'm plant-based. I'm like, all right, what does that mean to you? And it's always vegan, but like I would say I'm plant-based. I eat an enormous amount of fruits and vegetables and pulses and whole grains and things like that. But I also eat plenty of good quality animal products because they have so much nutrients that plants don't have, and vice versa. So this is not to say that I'm not fighting for meat here, but I'm fighting for what's a nutritious and healthy diet. And in terms of difficulties with a vegan diet, there's a lot of supplements you're gonna have to take. And if you're eating just a general shit diet that's low in nutrients anyway, I could say the same thing.
Yeah, true.
If it's vegan or not. But even a good, well put together vegan diet has holes in it. You have like things like vitamin B12. You're gonna get virtually no vitamin D, but then most people don't get much vitamin D in their diet anyway. We need that from sunlight. Omega-3s are gonna be a problem from marine sources. Zinc can be low, calcium can be low, and so it starts to really add up in terms of how you either have to micromanage that diet to make sure you're getting enough of what you need, or take a bunch of supplements. And either way could work. It's pretty easier just to take the supplements. Protein can be quite an issue, and for anyone who's training a lot, getting enough quality protein in, because plant protein is not as good quality as animal protein based on the amino acids that it provides, and the digestibility most of the time, and the utilization of the plant protein. It's not to say that plant proteins are bad, but plant foods, I'll say that till I'm in the ground, is they're fantastic. But animal protein is also excellent, and you've got things like fish and oily fish that has those omega-3s. You're not going to get those unless you're taking an algae supplement as a vegan. So from a health and a performance point of view, I don't think it's the best route to go down. Now, if someone changed to that diet, feels better, is performing better, have at it. Yeah. But you need to know about those nutrient deficiencies. You need to probably manage things a little bit better, and be a bit more specific. So it's kind of easier if you're going to include animal products.
It's difficult.
Yeah.
Like for you to be getting 4 servings of the full spectrum of amino acids throughout the day, like that's difficult. And especially like if you are let's say a female in a deficit, like that's it's tough going. You're going to have to be very picky with your food.
Yeah. Yeah. Unnecessarily so if you're just doing it for health, performance reasons. Yeah. Which is the issue. And then there's so much just misinformation in that documentary as well. Which
the beetroot bench press. Man, I've been drinking beetroot for the last 6 years.
And how's it gone for you?
Not great.
There's so many issues with it, and like misrepresenting science to try and make it look like with the burrito versus the black bean burrito, was it, where the blood was full of, the blood sample was fatty after eating the high fat meal. Like, there was no surprise there. Like, if you eat something that's higher in fat, it's going to end up in your blood a short time after, and then that's fine. That it gets metabolized and it goes to where it needs to go. That's no issue. So just that kind of shit, like not giving people any context for that. It's just like, oh, this blood is fatty, and then people are supposed to infer that that's a bad thing without any context whatsoever.
It's also kind of like the athletes that I picked there are outliers.
Yeah.
Like, you look at the majority of people that go to the Olympics, for example. How many of them are vegan? We're going to say 2%, 5%,
I don't know the number. It's not very many.
50% after game changes.
Yeah, and like exactly. They're outliers. So a lot of people in that athlete pool will probably perform very well in spite of what they do.
I also think at that level, when you have a dietitian or a nutritionist behind you, you're fine. I like you coach many vegans, yeah?
Yeah,
and like the difference between their diet now and the diet when they came to you is probably completely different in a lot of cases, unless they were well educated on the subject. Yeah,
they're usually not supplementing enough with certain things they need, and they're never eating enough protein. Actually, I had one girl start with me a few weeks ago who was eating like nearly 100 grams of protein a day, and I was like, that's cool. I haven't seen that before. Yeah. Well done.
How?
Yeah, she's eating a lot of like seitan, which is that isolated wheat protein. It's kind of has a meaty texture, so like it works kind of well. And then using plant-based protein powders, that's almost a prerequisite.
Yeah.
To try and hit protein targets on a vegan diet, which is important for recovery. Not only recovery, but like, you know, everything in our body is essentially made up of amino acids. You know, your DNA, any enzymes that catalyze reactions in the body, all that requires amino acids to work well. So they're important beyond just like being fit and strong, like way beyond that, like skin, hair, nails, if you want.
And even, do you find that in normal people that aren't vegan, that the two things that people aren't eating enough of is veg and protein servings? Would you find that as well?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, very few people eat enough plant products, so that's one positive to come out of this vegan shift. Is if it gets people thinking more about eating more plant foods, that's fantastic. And if it makes them eat more of those, yeah.
And even if it makes you more food conscious.
Yeah.
So like have you ever noticed this before, that people that like have an intolerance to food will still eat it? Yeah. That blows my mind. It's like like what do you think in that situation, and what is actually the limit, like the underlying factor there? Because that gets me.
Yeah, it's in a lot of cases it's, you know, sometimes the food consumption is habitual, and you need to, I suppose, help them find alternatives to that.
Yeah.
And then sometimes, you know, it's well, I don't know. We both struggle with the concept of this, but they aren't willing to stop eating it for the sake of.
They're okay with the how they're going to feel after.
Yeah. Or they're not willing to change it. Or it's not important enough to them to change it. They'd rather just keep consuming it, and that happens. And like, you know, everyone's responsible for themselves, and they can make their own choices.
That's true.
In that context, so, you know, it's like, well, okay, if you want these symptoms to improve, then maybe we try not eating so much of this food. But if you don't want to, that's obviously up to you. And as a coach, I'm only here to guide you. I'm not going to tell you. Tell you this is the way it is, and this is what you have to do. So yeah, if you end up eating more plant foods as a result of these sort of documentaries, wonderful. Just don't get the idea that there's anything wrong with animal products, because they are very healthy, and they're some of the most nutrient dense foods that we have in terms of, you know, high quality protein, vitamins, minerals, all that. And they're important to have. And then plants are excellent as well. So just have them both, for God's sake.
Yeah, I agree there. Now, so obviously, how long have you been in the industry now? You've been coaching how long?
I've been coaching for, it's actually about my 3-year anniversary sometime this month.
Very good. Okay. Yeah. And you're educational as a coach, like outside of your formal. So where would your go-to be for your information?
Yeah. Okay. So it's kind of there's two main. Well, I don't know if there's two main, but there's several main fields, I suppose, I try to stay on top of. Like, you got things obviously like nutrition research, which is always changing, and for that, I'm looking at things like.
I'm gonna take them down.
Yeah, come for it. I'm looking at research reviews most of the time, because, you know, reading primary literature and studies is important. It's important to be able to do that. But I find if you can subscribe to a research review, like say the examine.com research review, or the Alanea nutrition research review. There's many more. There's the Alan Aragon research review. James Krieger has Weightology. They're all very, very good, and they will essentially read the studies for you and distill them and summarize them and tell you what the takeaways are. So that's where I'm getting probably the bulk of my staying on top of nutrition science, because that way it's a bit more efficient for my time, you know, to not have to read tons and tons of primary research. I still do some because you need to stay on top of that, but the research reviews are great. There's certain websites that are good. You know, Lyle McDonald's bodyrecomposition.com is very good, and he has plenty of books. Renaissance Periodization have lots of ebooks. They're really, really good.
The Muscle and Strength Nutrition Pyramid is, or something like that. It's called
Yeah,
something like that.
Eric Helms. Eric Helms. That's an excellent resource as well. Depending on obviously what kind of level you're at.
Yeah.
And then, you know, the other side of things, like, you know, coaching and trying to influence behavior change. That's there's books on that. It's behavior change psychology is what that field is, I suppose. And Precision Nutrition put out a lot of good content on that, like for free with their articles as well. And then it's like just say online courses, or say audiobooks or physical books, and it's probably not as well defined in terms of how I'm studying it, but you see the same stuff eventually start to pop up over and over again.
Yeah.
And then you got other things like sleep and stress management, and again there's different books and resources on that, like why zebras don't get ulcers that you've got there beside you, on stress, which is great.
And then the another staple that I think a lot of people read as well is the Why We Sleep as well.
Yeah, that's is that Matt Walker's book?
It is Matt Walker's book, Why We Sleep.
Yeah.
Is that what it's called? I have it there.
There's...
No, it's not there. It is Why We Sleep.
There is a book called Why We Sleep. I think that's
I'll be back in 2 seconds. I'm going to go check that. That's going to annoy me. Jump up for a second.
Sorry.
Definitely didn't need to do this, but I'm committed now. Yeah, Matt Walker, Why We Sleep.
Yeah. So interestingly, I came across a criticism of that recently.
Okay.
Because that has a lot of hype around it. And the suggestion is that he's misrepresented a lot of research in that book, actually. And it's not as how to put it. Like, obviously sleep is incredibly important, and I'd nearly prioritize that over everything. So I would make sleep the priority. But yes, this kind of review that I saw recently of that book pointed out a lot of areas where he hasn't exactly interpreted the research properly.
Okay.
And it's a bit more sensational than it needs to be in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I can send it on to you.
Yeah,
actually,
do. Just kind of an over exaggeration.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good way to put it. And because there was a huge amount of hype around that book,
Yeah,
that got people thinking about sleep more,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is again good. And I think like sleep is something I'll talk about until the cows come home, because it is so important, and it's definitely the most overlooked, I think, in terms of say nutrition, exercise, and sleep, and say stress management in there as well. I think sleep and stress management get kind of tossed to the side, and everyone's kind of prepared to go gung-ho on their nutrition.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. We should start with our nutrition, start with our stress and the sleep, and then put nutrition, and then put the training in on top of that. So that's what I'll do with a lot of blocks. When people come to me, it's like we will use the first month as a priming phase. Nearly, I think there's a couple of people that have called it exactly that. Can't remember. Revive Stronger.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But like, it just means I'll pull a lot of people's volume down to complete maintenance, and let's look at getting most control out of the things that we can outside the gym. Because
like a lot of interesting things happen, like when you're not sleeping properly. You know, your hormone levels, so your hunger hormones increase, and satiety hormones are reduced when you're sleep deprived. And like sleep deprivation can be just anything less than probably 7 hours of decent sleep. So it's not like 3-4 hours, which is obviously worse. But you're more impulsive and you're hungrier and you crave more hyperpalatable foods.
And you also can't metabolize glucose as well. So there's it can be another spaghetti cycle there of overeating and not as good as using it for. Yeah,
your insulin sensitivity goes way down just from having not slept, even just for one night, which is very, very interesting. And then even in terms of body composition goals, there's studies where taking two groups, like one is sleep deprived and one is not, and they're in the exact same calorie deficit. They lose the exact same amount of weight.
Well, fat loss is different, isn't it?
Yeah, so the sleep deprived group lose way more muscle proportionally and way less fat tissue, whereas the well rested group, it's nearly all fat mass.
I've read that, but there wasn't any resistance training done as well. I think I'm right to say that.
Okay. Okay. Well, that would definitely
help to maintain muscle if the program is smart.
Yeah.
Okay, so as for me, education as a coach. So if I'm honest, I'd probably just start with all the triage stuff.
Yeah,
the triage medic stuff. So I think it's probably don't get your information from a podcast. If I'm honest, you get a soundbite of what's potentially not as important as what's before that, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I'd go do the triage stuff inside out.
Yeah. If you can do that,
it gives you quite a good understanding. And it just means that when you go on and try further that and get more in depth, you still have that basic understanding. So everything can tend to make a lot of more sense. So I that's how I would approach things. And let's say me 2 years ago, I would have been reading through all the sexy stuff, all the fun stuff that's so applicable. But then when it would go a little bit more in depth, and when it would go a bit more in depth, it would literally just strip back to complete basics that you should know, and that's where I'd be missing out. So that's what I have. That's where I would definitely prioritize, is really nailing down your anatomy, physiology, and basic kind of fundamentals of nutrition science. Okay, so that is us.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah,
I'm happy out. Thank you very much. I appreciate it big time. I really did enjoy, actually. I picked up quite a lot, and I'll make sure to have my clients listen over, because I think there's a lot of knowledge coming there. If people can find you in relation to coaching or just relation to bloke posting lots of videos of his dog.
So if that's what you need, I got you covered. You can find me on Instagram. It's Brian Háonghusa. You have my name in the description.
I'll tag you and stuff in it.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's hard to spell. Brian Háonghusa is my own personal account, but then the business account is the Fit Clinic. If you've any interest in coaching, or we write articles and blogs. I
would actually recommend you following the Fit Clinic. Just for it's everything that you post is quite easy to digest. It's quite basic to take on board, and is very trustworthy, to be fair.
It's effective, so it's we put out a lot of good content for free on the social media, especially on Instagram, and then also on our website. I do a lot of Q&As on through the Fit Clinic, and then go to the fitclinic.ie or the fitclinicnutrition.com if you want to find out more about the coaching and consultancy services, because we do have certainly one of the best nutrition coaching teams in the country, if not further afield. So, and we got a wide range of skills amongst all the coaches. So we all have different specialities. So we can cater for quite a wide audience there, which is great. So thanks for having me on, Dermot. That was fun, and I'll chat to you soon.
Daddy. Okay.